All right, welcome everyone. This is Dr. Clark in the Center for Weight Loss Success. Today on Losing Weight USA, we're going to talk about what to do about weight regain. Last week we hit on the topic of how to prevent weight regain. Now we're going to talk about, okay, what happens if you do regain some weight? How do you get kind of back on track? And there are going to be some common themes here. We'll hit on a number of times. You've heard me talk about them before. We'll have some specifics with those as well. All right, here's the official welcome. Welcome to Losing Weight USA, real-time answers to your weight loss questions. Some of the latest updates and research, a little bit of expert advice. Gives you direct access not only to me, but you should be receiving the health tips as well as the recipes. Get into the membership portal. That's where we place all these things. And I encourage, I'll mention it a couple times during this presentation too, getting into the membership portal because we have all the educational things there, as well as the behavior modification classes, which typically when we're talking about weight regain, we're talking about changing behavior. Okay. If you have questions during the presentation, type them in. Type into the chat box. We'll get to them at the end as time permits, and typically we will make time permit. If you think of things once we're all done, just give us a yell here at the Center for Weight Loss Success. The email is success@cfws.com. Phone number 757-873-1880. All right, so we're talking about kind of weight regain. Let me kind of flip the slides over here. All right, very good. Now I start with this overview because I always like people to kind of keep this in mind. I know this is somewhat of an oversimplification, but I talk about controlling health, which weight is a part of health. So controlling weight, controlling health often boils down to controlling insulin levels. Insulin is a hormone we cannot live without. We would die without it. But, okay, you actually want the smallest numbers possible because insulin tends to cause a lot of problems. So long-term weight control really boils down to controlling insulin levels. So it's really all the ways to control insulin levels. And the issue there is that for any individual, these kind of all these different ways, which I'm just going to list out 6 of them there, all these different ways may, for any one individual, the priority of which is the most important one for me is probably going to be different. Now, for our surgical patients, it's almost always count your carbohydrate. But for other people, it may not be that. Okay, it may be looking at the other things. So I kind of listed these things on the slide. But basically, all the different ways to control insulin. It's kind of low calorie. Anything that has calories in it will raise insulin levels. Low carbohydrate. Again, this is the biggest influencer in our surgical population. Carbohydrates influence insulin the most. Okay, but literally anything with calories will. Okay? Exercise helps. Okay, the more intense, the better it tends to work. Controlling stress, because stress tends to make it all by itself, makes insulin levels go up. Okay? So controlling stress, very important. Quality sleep, because poor quality sleep makes insulin levels go up all by itself. And subsequently then, yeah, quality sleep is very, very important. And finally, meal timing. And I talk about this all the time. What I really mean there is intermittent fasting. What I'm talking about there is that there needs to be not eating times. Very, very key concept, not eating times. The majority of any 24-hour day should be not eating. Okay? It's an incredibly rare person that eating multiple times throughout the day is a good idea. Okay? It just does not work well. Certainly for the patient population that I see, it does not work well. So meal timing is important, and that's also where intermittent fasting can come in, which we'll hit on a little bit on this, but really I've got different discussions on intermittent fasting. So that's, again, low calorie, low carb, exercise, controlling stress, quality sleep, meal timing. That's it. Those are the ones that really do the most to influence insulin levels. All right, so talking about weight regain, right? Okay, reasons for regaining weight. The most common reasons that I see, again, I'm seeing a skewed patient populations. The most common reason I see for people regaining weight, though, one, they stop their exercise. I was exercising along, I kept my weight very stable and kind of lost the weight, kept the weight very stable. I stopped for whatever reason, injury, life gets in the way, whatever reason. Okay. So stopping exercise, weight tends to drift the other direction. Probably the number one reason, though, is shifting calories to more carbohydrates. As we go on, it's really easy to do. It's because there's carbohydrate in everything. Right? It's easy to count hydration. It's easy to count your protein. But talking about carbohydrate sneaks into everything, and it's really easy to drift. And everyone has a tipping point. At a certain level, they'll struggle. For most of our surgical patients, again, the tipping point is really low. Now, for other people, okay, that tipping point may be really high, and subsequently it won't be their biggest influencer right there. But for most of our surgical patients, it's shifting calories or drifting on your carbohydrate. But certainly there are a lot of other things that are going to influence this. Lack of sleep, we kind of alluded to that. We talked about how to control insulin levels. So lack of sleep, which tends to increase stress all by itself. And when we do that, we tend to turn to comfort foods. Stress all by itself, yep, we increase cortisol levels. Leptin levels tend to not work so well, but it causes increase then fat storage. Medication changes. There are certain medications that really make it easier to lose weight. It's hard to say, gee, the medication's is the actual culprit, because there aren't a bunch of calories in the medications. It's like, no, but the medications themselves may either stimulate appetite, make it easier to store fat, and that's very real. Okay, that's not like, so often when people get switched medications or new medications, and some of the most common culprits, steroids are one of the biggest ones. Steroids are used to treat lots of different inflammatory conditions, whether it be some type of arthritis or kind of allergies, or they're very, very used commonly, and sometimes only in short dosings, okay, kind of a short, kind of use it for a period of time, but boy, it can set you back quite a bit. High blood pressure medications, a lot of them cause weight gain. Diabetic medications, many of them cause weight loss. Now there's some newer ones that actually help with weight loss, but most of the pill form medications generally actually with weight gain. Okay? And pretty much all the antidepressants. The exception there is Wellbutrin has been shown to have some help with weight loss, but almost all the antidepressants and pretty much all the antipsychotics, they all cause weight gain. Okay? Medical conditions, people can develop thyroid issues over time, really common in women, much more common in women and men as well, and they're typically more common as we get older. Okay? So these things all come about. They're going to influence weight. And then just aging in itself. For women, it's menopause, okay? But for men, it's also just aging and testosterone levels coming down. Women's testosterone levels coming down too. But the estrogen changes during menopause. It tends to make it easier to store fat. So when women talk about, gee, I went through menopause and I started gaining weight, it's not that they're making that up. It's like, no, that's a very real thing to happen. And it's how do we combat that? Okay, so there are lots of different common situations that can lead to weight gain or weight regain after you've lost the weight. And so it's kind of looking at those things. And then if there are certain ones that are more, more applied to you, then it's kind of figuring out, okay, what do we do to kind of offset that? And it may not be as simple as, well, just stop the medication or stop this or whatever. It's going to be, okay, we're going to have to use other methods to kind of work on against the medication or whatever it was that was making it a worse problem for you. Then some of it's just recognizing backsliding. It has nothing to do with other things, but just kind of backsliding is that we tend to be really diligent during our weight loss, weight maintenance, then all of a sudden we're not getting all the positive reinforcement anymore. It's easy to relapse or lapse. Okay? And about 2/3 of the lapses all occur within a number of months. Okay? And really, this backsliding tends to occur, and again, it's not simple to talk about, but it occurs very, very commonly. And we'll often overeat for lots of different reasons. It may be an event that triggered this, maybe a happy event that triggered this, but it also may be kind of a sad event or stressful event that triggered this too. So high risk situations where there's significant emotional changes, whether it be, really high with really good emotional changes, but then also kind of with the sad or bad or, the negative emotional changes too. And so subsequently, then we often turn to, eating our favorite foods. So kind of typically, if our coping response is, I did this for coping, I can't do this anymore. Okay? Whether it was I got injured, so I can't go to the gym right away, or I'm not able to do the walk that I wanted to, whether it be for, I have to take care of an elderly parent or whatever it is. Okay? Sometimes we just categorize some foods as bad. And I'm not a big fan of kind of categorizing good and bad foods. It's more of kind of which are better for us, which are worse for us. And they may be different foods in different individuals. Okay. But when we start categorizing good and bad, that's kind of a tension point right there. And we kind of think, I love this food, but it's bad for me. Okay. It's kind of a tension that's produced there. And at some point, then we kind of slip off the edge. Or if people are telling us, you can't have this, shouldn't have this, it's kind of all of a sudden also sets up that, hey, I'm going to rebel. Okay. And so there are all these little things that play into this. So reality is it's really common. Yes, that's where I'm going with all this. Reality is it's really common. So what do? Well, part of it is just kind of taking charge of your own thinking. Don't let other people force their thinking on you. Take charge in your own thinking. And sometimes our errors in thinking are kind of that everything is black-white. It really isn't. And we often think of it as kind of good or bad, or I was doing great, now I'm doing terrible. And it really isn't that dramatic, so to speak. There are all these little shades of gray sort of things. And we have to not fall into perfectionism. Is that, we're either perfect or we're terrible. It's like, there's no in between. Well, yes, there is. There's lots in between. One, we're never perfect, and really, probably, we're never really terrible either. It's kind of, so you want to avoid those thinking traps, okay? Kind of listening to your self-talk. We all do it, okay? We all talk to ourselves all the time. Okay, I shouldn't have done that. Should have said that. Should have did that. If I could do that over again, I would have done this. Okay? How many times do you do that throughout the day? Okay? Kind of, we all do it. And, are we actually making excuses or kind of what? So challenge yourself. Listen to yourself and challenge yourself to change that thinking and change that discussion. It's like, let's make it a more positive discussion, not how bad it was, but what did I do right? Okay, and then kind of building on those type of things. And that can help you then kind of make those better decisions. And again, here's where I'm going to kind of throw out there is, well, make sure you're getting into the membership site, because we have all those behavior modification classes, 26 or more of them, 26 behavior modification classes, but you can watch and look at all the different topics, watching ones that are most pertinent to you. You should watch them all. But the ones that are most pertinent to you, watch them again. Okay. And so kind of work on those things. But again, it's important, get into the membership site, take advantage of all the resources that are there. All right, so and then it's also then developing with that kind of self-management skills. And so you want to learn to identify as well as then be able to change behaviors, right? Because no matter what, if we're going to change something, we got to change behavior. There isn't any way around that. Okay. I'll throw out that kind of a previous discussion. Can I do it and is it worth it? Any behavior change. Can I do it and is it worth it? If you can't answer yes to those two questions, there's no way you're going to make the behavior change. That get a little different discussion. We've discussed that in the past. Okay. So some self-management tools that can help with kind of relearning these things or getting back to this. Just open communication. Okay, be open and honest, whether it's be with yourself, but also with our friends, our family, our coworkers. Okay, problem solve. It's like, okay, this is the problem. This is what tripped me up last time. What can I do differently? And so because the same situation will occur again. It almost always does. It's not like, oh, there's a once in a lifetime, thing that just occurred there. It's like, no, we're going to, the next celebration we're going to, we're going to be in that same situation probably. Self-monitoring, and how many times do I say this? Write it down. Journaling is probably the best tool you can possibly have, but it's kind of tracking kind of not only what you're eating, But tracking kind of, gee, when I make mistakes, what's my response? How do I cope with that better? Kind of figuring those things out. So journaling of multiple different kinds that are not just food eating, but emotions and things like that. It can be an extremely powerful tool. Managing conflict, whether it be at home, spouse, family, friends, coworkers. Okay. We mentioned this earlier, coping with emotions. Okay. Recognize what's kind of work towards detriment versus these are helpful type of things. Kind of avoid thinking traps, that's it, of perfectionism, those irrational beliefs. Managing stress to have that coping behaviors. Exercise, deep breathing, meditation, yoga, whatever. Okay, warm bath, massage, anything. Hopefully it's not ice cream. All right. And then kind of managing time. We all have time that kind of slips away from us. We all think we never have time. Well, we do have time. We just need to prioritize what we're talking about. Is that these more important, these healthier things need to go up the time scale, so to speak. So the time scale meaning that is that obviously we can't make more than 24 hours a day, but we can manage that time a little bit better and kind of time management skills. It's an importance for all of us, whether it has anything to do with weight and health, but just time management skills are very important. All right, so what are kind of some tips then, kind of as far as getting back on track? Gee, I'm struggling for a little while. What am I going to do? Well, the first thing is kind of to sum up everything I just talked about there is don't beat yourself up. None of us are perfect. We're going to fall off the wagon, so to speak. Kind of try to recognize what the triggering event was and what started that relapse and learn from it. What am I going to do differently? Have a plan. Be patient with yourself. We're not going to be just, hey, I know I screwed up and now I'll never do that again. It's like, well, no, we'll probably screw up again and we'll probably do it again and kind of start just modifying kind of our thinking pattern there, as well as modifying how our response is and what are we going to do about it. Kind of thinking outside the box is always a good thing. It's like that proverbial, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, it's like, well, you're going to get the same results. So we need to change something up. Okay, take a different approach. And sometimes that's where kind of sitting down with one of the counselors here at the office or through, really any counselor, but here at the office, we have trying to problem solve. It's like, gee, here's the situation I find myself in. What can I do differently? How do I prepare to do something differently? Again, the behavior modification classes, but sometimes just talking it through here at the office can be very helpful. All right. So some tips to just kind of restart, so to speak. Okay, reset there. It is not a bad idea, and people do this all the time, is try one of the Jumpstart, a quick start 2-week programs of kind of, okay, going back to the beginning, go back to the shakes, go back to the kind of, here's what I was doing at the beginning, really pushing the water. Okay? So when someone comes to me, now that can always be a good idea. When someone comes to me and says, I'm starting to struggle, okay, or I'm struggling, gee, my weight jumped up, okay, first things I'm going to tell them to do is really 3 really important things. And one is just push the water. Kind of, we forget about that. Push the water. Now, for someone who's had surgery, pushing the water will help you feel full. It's also great hydration, and I'll say, there are lots of good reasons to do it. It's a healthy thing to do, but it'll also make you feel full. So if it's not time to eat, push the water. Okay. Now, to back up from that one step is that if you're struggling, make sure you're weighing daily. People often tell them, gee, I don't weigh daily, or I only weigh once a week, or only once every couple of weeks. No, weigh yourself daily. It's the best monitor we have. And the reason is not to just look down and go, oh, good or oh, bad. The reason is reflect on the previous 24 hours. What about the last 24 hours could actually influence this number today? And it may be I didn't exercise, maybe I had extra salt, I didn't poop. There are some certain things that will influence that, and you start figuring those things out. But more importantly, you'll start figuring out, gee, I did have a couple cookies yesterday. What happened to my weight the next day? You'll start to figure out those little things that matter a lot to you, not to somebody else. It's like, no, to you. It's like I can give you some ideas of what may influence your weight a lot, but still, it really depends on your life. Look at the previous 24 hours. What's influenced your weight? Right? You'll probably start figuring out those little things. When I do this, when I eat this, it does this to my weight. When I don't eat this, it does this to my weight. Okay? So weigh yourself daily. Push the water and work on meal timing. I mentioned earlier, kind of meal timing is like so important. Okay, eating a little bit all throughout the day has never been a good weight loss plan for lots of reasons. Okay, and typically we eat a lot more than we ever think we did. And besides it, anytime you eat, anything has calories in it raises insulin levels. So you're constantly having higher insulin levels. The point there being is that it's very important to have not eating times. It should be only a very short period of time that you're eating during any 24-hour day, 2 or 3 times a day. Okay? Meal timing. Short period of time when I'm eating, now I'm not eating. I'm really pushing the water during those not eating times. And again, that's where fasting comes in. Is that all you're doing is extending the not eating times. If you get in what you need when you eat, there's not a reason then you need to keep eating in between times. It's like, no, that's fasting become very important part of an overall health plan. Fasting is not an eating plan. It's a not eating plan. But meal timing is extremely important. So weigh yourself daily, push the water, meal timing, and then I guess third thing is then count your carbohydrate. Because for our surgical patients, that's the number one thing from an eating perspective. So that has nothing to do with timing itself. Timing is eating or not eating, yes or no. There's no in between eating and not eating. Either are or not. And sometimes that single decision is easier to make than what am I going to eat, where there's could be thousands of decisions to make there. Okay? Eating or not eating is one single decision. Sometimes easier to make, just one decision. Okay, but if you're going to talk about eating, then count your carbohydrate, number one thing. If you're going to count 2 things, count your protein too, but that's easy. Okay, and then count your exercise. That's kind of what I'll call the third thing. It's like, okay, activity, whether it be step counter, however you do it. And again, write it down. Journaling, extremely powerful tool. So it's kind of those tips to restart. All right. Very good. I kind of ran through that. So just let me go, if you're struggling, again, weigh yourself daily, push the water, meal timing, which is eating times, not eating times, count your carbohydrate, work on bumping up the exercise, and write it down. Journal. The most powerful tool there is. All right. So I mentioned earlier fasting. Okay. Fasting is not eating. Okay. So people think, geez, fasting is a weight loss plan. No, fasting's not a weight loss plan. Basically, it's a not eating plan. You have to have a really good eating plan to go along with it. But potential benefits of fasting, not going in techniques and all that. Fasting is just not eating. That's the simplified version. Okay. It's available to anybody. So I'm not telling you to do something. I'm telling you to not do something. Okay. Not eat. Okay? It's available to anyone immediately. You don't have to get anything. There's nothing to buy. There's nothing to, I have to get set to do this. Like, no, you just don't. Okay. Available immediately to anyone. It's simple. It's not like the concept is hard. It's like, no, don't eat. And it works. There's no way for it not to work. There's no skill involved. It's like, no, I'm telling you to not do something. It's like, so it's not like you have to learn to do something. It's like, no, it's again, immediately available. And it will work. There's not a way for it not to work. When people tell me, well, fasting doesn't work, it's like, well, you just haven't figured out the right pattern for you. That's all. It's not that it won't work. It'll work. And again, you have to have a good eating plan that goes along with it. So it's not fasting itself. But fasting will work. There's not a way for it not to work. It's free. It costs absolutely nothing. It actually saves you money because you're eating less. Okay? So it's literally, there's no cost. It's convenient. It's not like, there isn't a time you can't do it. It's like, literally, it saves time because you don't have to worry about, I have to make food, buy food, prepare food, clean up after food, all that kind of thing. It's like, no, it actually saves you time, saves you money, and saves you time. It's certainly flexible because you can do it anytime, anywhere. Right? Nobody has to know. So you can do it anywhere, wherever, whenever. You can do it with literally any diet. You think Dr. Clark's crazy, low carb diet's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. It's that, okay, we can do it with any diet. Okay, it's just you have an eating plan, and now fasting is a not eating plan. Okay, so it can be part of any plan. And it really is unlimited power. What I mean by that is that you decide. No one else decides for you as far as fasting. You decide. It's like you decide when you're going to do it, when you're going to not do it. And you can keep going as long as you want. You know, talk about in the fasting discussion, the world record is 382 days. I don't think that's a good idea for you to do that, but still, the world record, you can do it for as long as you're comfortable, as long as you're healthy to do it. So you can keep going. Right? So anyway, lots of kind of bonus kind of tip there for fasting. It's like, yeah, it works well. All right, so we'll get off that track for now. So final tips for success: arm yourself with knowledge. Okay, use the information we talk about in this whole Weight Management University thing. Again, get in the membership site. We have all kinds of information in there, as well as your book and these webinars and all kind of new recipe ideas, fitness stuff. Right? And if you have questions, just pick up the phone or stop by or send an email. Here, this is what we do. Now, with all that, kind of acknowledge and celebrate when you're actually doing well. When you start taking control of those known slip-ups, okay? And also then keep supportive people around you. That's, you want some cheerleaders, so to speak. Cheerleaders are very important in this. All right, if you're struggling, we do have that whole Back on Track After Weight Loss Surgery in book form, but also kind of digital form. You can get it online through the store. You can get it through our website. Actually, you can get the book through Amazon. All right, question. Don't see any questions sitting out there, but obviously this is a topic that's very, very common. It's like, people lose weight, they often regain weight. Actually, the majority of people do regain weight. So the question is, how do you get back there? Again, they're kind of oversimplifying, pushing some of this, but it's very important. If you don't start with those basics, you got to get the basics right, okay? Or else this whole thing doesn't work very well. All right. If you think of questions, you know where to find us here at Center for Weight Loss Success. Okay. The email is success@cfws.com. Phone number 757-873-1880. Should be logging into that membership site. How many times have I said that during just this single presentation? But just specifically, get the weight loss tips as well as the weekly recipes. Tune in each Tuesday, 12:15. For the next webinar. Watch your email for the invite and link. And remember, it's your life. Make it a healthy one. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.